What's up guys, Xhale here with another quick, safe and simple Molten Core strategy guide. This guide is about Garr and his 8 Firesworns. Garr is what I would consider the first difficult boss of Molten Core, but you'll find that after a few weeks of getting him on farm, the pull is the only hard part of it and the fight itself is actually pretty boring. The first thing you need to concern yourself with is your group composition. You need your main tank and then you need some combination of 8 Warlocks or off-tanks. The standard is having 4 Warlocks and 4 off-tanks, though your off-tanks don't even have to be tank spec. They can just be warriors or druids that hop into bear or throw on a sword and board and tank an ad for just a few seconds. The objective of this fight is to banish as many ads as possible for the entire duration while killing the non-banished ads and then killing Garr somewhere in between. But before we go over strategy and placement, let's go over the abilities first. Garr just has 2 abilities, Anti-Magic Pulse and Magma Shackles. The Firesworns have 3 abilities, Separation Anxiety, Immolate, and Eruption. Anti-Magic Pulse will remove 1 beneficial effect from all the players in the raid. This means that you can go one of 2 directions. You can either apply non-essential buffs like Noggin Fogger or Water Walking or Water Breathing or anything like that to the entire raid, or you could not buff at all. I personally prefer to at least start with the buffs even if we lose them during the fight. And this is something to think about if you have your Rend or Onyxia buff on. It may prompt your group to skip Garr and come back to him at a later time after you've killed Baron, Shaz, or someone else. But overall, the pulse is unavoidable and rebuffing during the fight really is a waste of mana. Magma Shackles slows player movement speed by 60% for 15 seconds and will affect most everybody in the raid. Separation Anxiety is triggered when the Firesworns are tanked more than 15 yards away from Garr himself. This will cause them to enrage and deal 300% damage. Immolate is just as it sounds and it'll be cast on random raid members by the Firesworns. It needs to be dispelled immediately. Eruption occurs when the Firesworns die. They will explode, dealing massive damage and knocking back any players within 15 yards for a very, very long range. Because of these combinations of abilities between Garr and the Firesworns, the pull and the placement are the 2 most important things when dealing with this fight. For placement, you're going to have 3 distinct areas. One where Garr is tanked, one where the ads are killed, and then the remainder of the area where the ads that are still alive will be held. The only important placement of the 3 is that you want your off-tank to have their back to the wall, so when the ad gets killed and it explodes, your off-tank will hit the wall, won't go flying in the air, and will take less damage. We typically have our kill area right about here. And because we don't want Garr too far away, we typically tank him just slightly to the west on the other side of the plumes. The third and final area where the ads will be kept alive or banished will be just towards the center of the room, and it really doesn't matter where they are because they don't have a cleave or AoE or anything like that. So to start off this fight, you're going to want a mage to ice block pull. That is to either just run towards the enemies, Garr and all of his Firesworns, or to blink in and then ice block prior to the enemy mobs hitting that mage. When the mage ice blocks, that will cause the mobs to disperse to the rest of the group. This will allow enough time for the off-tanks to get off a melee and possibly a move on the ads that they are supposed to tank, and the Warlocks to banish. Let me also say that the best thing Warlocks can do is have their Voidwalker out the entirety of the fight. They can keep the Voidwalker on their specific banished target, and if the target becomes unbanished for a few seconds and has a little uptime running around, it will attack the Voidwalker and not go directly to the raid. You then want your off-tanks one by one to pull their respective ad into the kill area, and you only want to do this one at a time so that the AoE explosion doesn't affect multiple targets and your raid doesn't incur more damage than they have to. Typically what we do is we have all of our DPS jump on Skull, or the first ad that we're going to kill. When that first ad is at 50%, we then have all of our melee run over to Garr and stay on Garr for the remainder of the fight. What this allows us to do is the main tank can gain enough aggro on Garr that the melee can go crazy and they don't have to worry about pulling aggro. But you still get a little bit of damage on that first ad to try to get them out of the fight as quickly as possible and free up one of your off tanks if something goes awry, such as a banish or one of the other off tanks die. And your Warlocks will stay on their designated banished targets 100% of the fight. One by one, the Firesworns that are not being banished will be pulled to that kill area and dispatched one at a time by your ranged. If your ranged DPS are killing the ads too quickly and one of them gets too low and is close to death before it gets to the kill area, just make sure all of your group disperses and moves away from that ad. No one should be getting hit by that explosion except for one person, and that's the off-tank tanking that ad. Like I said, the hardest thing about this fight is the initial pull, and then the placement and distribution of the ads. If your warlocks can keep them banished, if you can get a good ice block pull, and your tanks can pull the ads one by one out of the group without your melee being near them when they die, this fight is cake and you'll find it quite boring. And that's everything you need to know about Garr. If you found this video helpful, learned anything new, drop a comment or a like down below. Also, be sure to subscribe for more quick, safe, and simple guides. Until next time, this has been Xhale.